Good morning. It is 10:30 a.m. on Sunday, August 18th, 2019. I'm Christiana Ellis and I just got up and this is 5 more minutes. And because it's Sunday, I'm continuing my rewatch of Gravity Falls with Season 2, Episode 17, Dipper and Mabel versus the Future. This is a big episode because, of course, it leads us right into the three-part finale. Everything changes after this, which is, of course, after the theme of the episode exactly. And so it's an interesting episode, because obviously there's the big plot stuff that happens, but the primary focus of the episode is this is all about Dipper and Mabel feeling like everything's changing, which is going to be more true than they even expect, but is also something that everyone really relates to because it's just real life stuff. But it does actually go into some of what has been a challenge in a couple of places for this show, where whenever it puts Dipper and Mabel's various issues in conflict with one another, it's a little bit unfair towards Mabel. And this is not a big deal. This is just a minor observation that the Dipper's stuff, in a broader sense, feels more important, right? Mabel is dealing with, for the most part, real kid issues, whereas Dipper gets thrust into these, world-saving adventures with, incredible monsters and everything. And, Mabel sometimes too. But the point here where the two kids are feeling, mismatched, right? Like they're not in the same place. And Mabel in particular feeling like she's being left behind. In some ways, those feelings, those ordinary feelings, are having to compete with Dipper literally scavenging an alien spaceship in order to save the world, right? So it creates this imbalance. Like the two are given equal weight in the episode, but in some ways, because just of the very nature of that, Dipper's stuff feels more important objectively, and yet it's the show that sets it up that way, right? So it's a little, I have some, I don't want to say mixed feelings exactly about that, as much as it's just an observation about it. Callan, the show is Gravity Falls. So I'm reviewing season 2, episode 17, because I do that every Sunday. Thanks. Sorry, I'm just on a roll here. Okay, so in any event, we begin the episode with the reveal that it is almost the twins' 13th birthday, but it's also approaching the end of the summer. And so this is this big transition. The kids at this point are both eager to celebrate, right? Like this is a threshold that they are eager to cross. And they are basically both excited about this. And, Mabel is playing kind of silly kid games with it. Like, she glues eyes to her chin and does Mr. Upside Downington. And Dipper is amused by it. And they're actually having a good time. They're planning the party. And so as they are, let's see. Sorry, I'm reviewing a wiki here. So they, the plan is to have a big party, right? And that's kind of where we open the episode. And there's lots of discussions. Mabel, of course, is big into party planning. Dipper seems on board too. Stan says, "Nope, you can't have another party here into the." You can't have another party in the Mystery Shack, not after the last one ended up with zombies. And so there's a discussion of I keep finding bits of the undead under the couch cushions and that sort of thing. And so Seuss recommends, hey, you could have a party in the high school gym because it's empty all summer. And this, sets up this idea of looking ahead to high school, because that's part of what Mabel says too, is that, we're 13, we're going to be officially teenagers, but we're also 1 year away from high school, which she imagines is this High School Musical-esque scenario. And so Dipper's going to be on board with the party planning, except that then Ford calls him over. Apparently Ford finds setting his face on fire to be faster than shaving, which probably is faster, if that's the only measure you're going by. Anyway, he reintroduces the interdimensional rift that's been established in the last couple of episodes and says, oh no, it's cracking. And we can't let it break open, because then the end of the world, Weirdmageddon, as the nightmare realm and the prime reality blend together, and can't let that happen, obviously. We know that, that makes sense. Yeah, that's all stands to reason. And so Dipper has been asked by Ford to accompany him on a mission to prevent that. And see, this is where I'm talking about the emotional weight given equal time between Dipper's and Mabel's issues feels strange when one of them is literally trying to save the world and then the other one is trying to plan her birthday party, right? And they're kids, so they give that emotional weight, but it's also just one of those things where there's a little bit of an unfair comparison there. But anyway, they proceed where they're going to stay in touch with the walkie-talkies, because they're both feeling very close to one another, except pulled in opposite directions right now. Mabel is a little disappointed to not have her brother with her as she plans the party. And then, of course, as we follow her through the day, she keeps having all of these distressing realizations. Like, she goes, and high school registration is actually happening at the high school when she shows up to check it out. And she discovers all of the high schoolers there say they hate high school. Oh no, what if high school isn't great like she imagined? And so she's starting to feel like, oh no, what if growing up isn't going to be great like we thought? And she starts feeling like, well, what if, she's worried about it, right? And she wants to talk to Dipper, but she can't reach him on the walkie-talkie because he's out in the middle of nowhere and then delving into an alien spaceship with Ford. Now let's talk about Dipper and Ford going through. So as they're doing this very cool excavation of this spaceship, looking for this, extraterrestrial adhesive, Ford takes that opportunity to talk to Dipper about the idea of him not going back to California at the end of the summer, staying to be homeschooled with Ford and being his apprentice in uncovering the mysteries of the unknown and everything. And obviously, there are lots of pieces of that Dipper is entirely thrilled by, but he does immediately recognize, but what about Mabel? Sounds like she is not invited and probably wouldn't want to anyway. But that would mean separating. And even if they see each other sometimes, they've always been together. Even as they pursued their other things, they were each kind of a home base for one another. And he's rightly anxious about that. And so he's uncomfortable. And I want to talk about a little bit of Ford too, because obviously Ford is good-hearted and he does want to save the world, which is obviously a good thing. He's an adventurer type, and it's nice that he sees something of himself in Dipper. But at the same time, he's not always super responsible or aware of other people's feelings or issues. And so he's kind of pretty dismissive of Dipper's worrying about Mabel, says, oh, she's great, she'll do fine, no worries. And also at the same time, Ford is taking Dipper through this alien spaceship, making it sound like, oh, I remember when I would have been excited by this, but now it's just kind of blah. Don't worry about it. Flip switches. Who cares? No problem. This is fine. In the meantime, he's doing extremely weird parkour maneuvers with a magnet gun and expecting Dipper to just follow him. And apparently there is an active security system where this is actually very dangerous. And he had not prepared Dipper for that at all. And then demanded that Dipper be able to not be afraid of the super advanced alien security drone that has come after them and detects adrenaline. And it has put Dipper in a very dangerous situation that he was not at all prepared for, because Ford, frankly, wasn't very considerate of those things. And Dipper, unfortunately, has got such a hero worship of him that he's not really kind of aware of that type of concern. Like it doesn't occur to him to think that that's kind of irresponsible of Ford, and probably would continue if he were to stay as an apprentice. And so having the two, so obviously we get the big action sequence that is pretty great in terms of it. It starts very slow, where we see them trip a little laser tripwire, and then when the drones show up, and then they detect Dipper's fear, and then they attack, and Ford is shot, and then he's captured by the probe, and now the probe is going to get shot into space, and the whole way that it kind of just escalates, the pacing of it is really fantastic. It's an amazing sequence, and Dipper displays some really expert heroism in managing to save his great uncle, and this leads to him accepting Ford's offer. And they have recovered the adhesive that they wanted, and so everything seems like it's great. And so that's where Dipper's at. But of course, as they have emerged from the alien spaceship, now Mabel can hear them on the walkie-talkie again, and she hears Dipper basically agree to leave her. And so she's very bummed about it. Now, she doesn't even really get mad as much as she's just heartbroken that he's going to leave her. And even though technically he's the one that's staying in Gravity Falls, and she's the one that's going, but she discovered the high school is going to be bad. She discovers that her two best friends that she made there in Gravity Falls aren't going to be able to go to her party. And she's just she had been feeling all day with, everything's changing and I don't like it, but at least I'll have Dipper. And now Dipper's going to be gone too. And she's just feeling heartbroken that everything's changing. She has no control and she doesn't know what to do. And obviously all of that is extremely relatable, right? And it's just a weird thing to put that on a teeter-totter against gotta save the world from interdimensional collapse. Anyway. So we can understand, though, where Mabel's coming from. And Dipper is honestly conflicted. He is really feeling like, as much as staying behind and being Ford's apprentice is something that sounds very exciting, he sees how much it's hurting Mabel, and he's actually reconsidering. But unfortunately, in the meantime, the two twins have accidentally grabbed each other's backpack. And so when Mabel goes off to kind of just be sad by herself for a little bit, she has inadvertently taken Dipper's backpack with her, along with the interdimensional rift. And so when Blendon, the time traveler, appears and tries to say, oh, well, you would like the summer to go on forever? I have a way to make that happen. And he's a time traveler, so we believe him. And it's interesting how that scene builds too. Again, the building of the tension is really wonderful, because we see her heartbroken and we know that she's upset. And then we see Blendon show up, and he's promising something that sounds a little like, that's maybe not a great idea. Like, let's put us in a time bubble so that time doesn't pass. Really? Is that actually the right thing? But he seems like it sounds great. But then what he wants is the interdimensional rift, and the way he pitches it is just like, oh, well, it's just a little thing from your great uncle's lab. He probably wouldn't even miss it. And we're starting to go, whoa, wait a minute. But the thing is, they've left Mabel out of that whole discussion. Ford insisted to Dipper that he not tell anyone, not even Mabel. And so she doesn't know what it is. She doesn't know how important it is or how dangerous it is. And so even then, with reluctance, she hands it over, only for the horrible reveal that Blendon has in fact been possessed by Bill Cipher, and everything's ruined. He smashes the rift, the dimensional portal opens, and everything will change. It's taking the actual reality of teenagers growing up and turning it into equivalent with the end of the world. And so, of course, Weirdmageddon has arrived, and I think it's really one of the things that I think people who have seen this show, one of the things that they reflect on it is how it's great all along, but then in the climax, it just turns the dial up to 12 in a way that I think a lot of people hadn't expected. That we've got the next 3 episodes, or the remaining ones, but all 3 of them are dealing with literal end of the world stuff, and not just an if X happens, it's the end of the world. It's like, no, it's happened. It happened. It's happening. The end of the world is happening. And everything, so like the reset to status quo every week of the town that we've kind of come to expect is suddenly no longer true. And it's pretty exciting. So next week, we'll talk about Weirdmageddon Part 1. And in the meantime, I'll talk to you all tomorrow for 5 more minutes.